Greetings, I'm John Spirit.
I'm Arch Ezekiel.
We built this rainbow generator specifically because I'm gay and for no other reason, and welcome to Ultimate Alchemy Recap Super Shorts. The rainbow generator is a device from Extra Utilities 2 that produces 25 million RF per tick if the generator spectrum is complete. The generator spectrum consists of 16 generators from Extra Utilities, all of which must be running at the same time in order for the rainbow generator to start working. Some of these generators are harder to run than others. We wanted that 25 million RF per tick for a variety of reasons. One of them is that to make diamonds with the arc furnace, you need 32,768 RF per tick, and 25 million RF per tick is at least 32,768 RF per tick. And none of Extra Utilities generators can actually produce that much RF per tick, so it's kind of relevant that we do this. We could have done big reactors, but we did this instead. This is the option we chose, and this is the option we'll show you. The other reason we need all that power was for Draconic Evolution, because making things like Awakened Draconium requires a cool 350 million RF, which is thankfully only about 10 to 15 ticks in the Rainbow Generator. But automating this thing was a doozy. Let's start with all the easy bits. The easy bits are the Survival Generator, which uses any fuel that burns in the furnace to run and produces a measly 5 RF per tick. We are just importing wood into that one and going on with our day. The Furnace Generator has an identical behavior, but it works faster. So we're also importing wood into the Furnace Generator. The Overclock Generator is the same again, it just runs incredibly fast. But we already have that one over here, and this one's definitely never gonna stop running. The Magmatic Generator is pretty easy as long as you have lava, and I think it takes a while to, it takes a good while to use a bucket of lava, and we make buckets of lava relatively quickly, so we have enough for the Magmatic Generator, which is right here. The Heated Redstone Generator uses the same amount of lava per tick, but adds redstone and produces 4 times the RF per tick. In order to import into that one, we needed 2 importers, one that was importing the redstone as an item. By the way, we're using Ender.io refined storage conduits here so we can have multiple exporters in the same block. And we needed to import lava as a fluid. The Ender Generator has 2 options, an Ender Pearl or an Eye of Ender which lasts twice as long. We weren't absolutely sure that our system could make Ender Pearls quite fast enough, although with fastest acceleration ones, it is pretty quick. But Blaze Powder is not too hard, since you can just get it from centrifugal separating a magma cream. And we've talked about that before. So that's the Ender Generator. The remaining easy generators are also what I call the deadly generators, because they kill you. We've placed all 4 of them all the way down there and have set up a simple redstone disabling system right here where I can turn on a lever to turn them off. But if you get near them, you can die in a variety of ways. To do this wireless turn-off system, we use the redstone transmitter and receiver from RF Tools. When you make one of each, you can right-click a receiver with a transmitter or vice versa to link them. I don't think there are any distance limits. The chunks will certainly need to be loaded though. The Explosive Generator runs on either TNT or gunpowder, and we have lots of TNT thanks to our Entrepinium system, so go us. The Nether Star Generator runs on Nether Stars, and we have lots of Nether Stars thanks to our Nether Star auto-crafting system, go us times 2. The Death Generator runs on any of these 4 items, and most of them are really annoying except for the bone block, which you can make from bone meal, but that does mean we had to automate bone meal. And automating bone meal requires automating peat, so let's talk about automating peat. You may remember from one of the very first videos that if you craft bog earth and place it down, it'll gradually mature into matured bog earth, and if you break it, it'll give you peat. That's why we have this mechanical user here that places down bog earth whenever there are few enough peat in the system for it to run. This mechanical user applies a fastest acceleration wand to quickly accelerate it to full growth. Each level of maturity of bog earth is a different metadata number. So to get a variable for bog earth full grown, which has a value of forestry bog earth 3, we used a materializer from Integrated Dynamics. You can put a dynamic variable in it, like for example the block underneath this block reader. And if you put a variable card in it, that variable card will become materialized with the value, which in this case is bog earth. Oh, it's bog earth because bog earth is growing right now. Earlier, it was air. Here you can see the system running because for some reason our system has decided to consume peat and we better see it before it ends. The only other complicated part of the system is that this mechanical miner receives redstone on whenever the block in world is equal to the variable bog earth full grown. Then it releases a redstone signal and the mechanical miner turns on. Once you have peat, you can smelt it really inefficiently to make ash. And this ash can be used really inefficiently to make 1 compost. So you're basically using 10 peat to make 32 bone meal, which is kind of bad, but like it's enough. It does the job. Once you have all that bone meal, you can make the bone blocks and run the death generator. I know I promised to explain the Halitosis Generator, but Arch is not currently here to tell me about Dragon's Breath, so it'll be a second. For now, it's time for one of the spicier generators here, the Pink Generator, which runs on anything pink, and therefore basically runs on you being able to produce pink dye. There are a lot of pink things, however, not all of them are easy to produce. The easiest of the lot, in terms of volume compared to pink dye, is of course pink glass panes. Anything in the pink generator runs for 0.5 seconds, so glass panes are a perfectly reasonable strategy. Of course, you need pink glass, which requires you need glass, but we have that automated already. So the real problem is getting pink dye, and that is why we have a system which produces pink petals from Botania. Here we have a refined storage crafter, which has a recipe in it that turns 16 pink petals into 64 pink petals. Any smaller and things get weird because the system doesn't know how to request items for itself. So 16 to 64. That crafter shoves 16 petals into this mechanical user, which uses use item on block to plant a petal in this grass. We export bone meal constantly into this user with a crafting upgrade so that we can bone meal that petal into a tall flower. And this mechanical user has a left click on shears in order to break the flower and make it an item in world. This hopper hawk picks up that item in world. It can either pick up the pink tall flower or the magenta tall flower. It sticks them in a crafty crate, which is an item from Botania that automatically crafts for you according to a pattern. When you insert items into the crafty crate in the correct order, it will fill up and then immediately drop the item that results from the craft into, for example, a hopper beneath it. It does require a block of air between it and any collecting device. It doesn't just drop into a chest underneath it. We just use the crafting pattern 1x1. I don't know much about how to use the more complicated crafting patterns, but I do know that if you just right-click with the crafting pattern 1x1 on this crafting crate, it'll take it. And the moment any item goes into the crafting crate from the Hopper Hawk, it will immediately attempt to craft that item into whatever comes from that item in a crafting table. Let's see it in action right now. Here you can see the petals are being placed and grown, and the flowers are being thrown into the world, and this crafty crate is working and producing petals which fall into this item hopper and get imported into the system. To turn petals into floral powder, we just have a pestle and mortar in this RF Tools crafter with XC so that remaining items stay in the input, and the pink powder goes into the export. Then we can make our pink stained glass and run our pink generator. Now let's talk about the culinary generator, which runs on any food, including these fun void eggplants from Content Tweaker. Void eggplants can be made in exactly one way. Void seeds and a phytogenic insulator will produce more void seeds and also void eggplants. We produce lots of void eggplants when we use Flux Phytogrow, and Flux Phytogrow is simply Phytogrow in an energetic infuser, and Phytogrow is simply fertilizer and sawdust. Sawdust is wood in a pulverizer, fertilizer is going to be apatite and sand, and our apatite just comes from an energetic infuser on bone meal, which we have lots of. Water, we are literally just importing it into the system. We are producing all of our water using an external storage on this aqueous accumulator. I swear there's another place where we produce water, but Arch isn't here to fill me in. It turns out it's right here, but this tank was full of canola oil because Arch forgot to filter the external storage on it. This portable tank is being filled by an ever-full urn, which is very aggressive and tries to fill everything around it, but thankfully we put mostly things that require water. And this carpenter is our special carpenter just for making stuff with Aquasalis Mundus by hand, so it'll never empty. Anyway, we also use this water, as well as an Extra Utilities mining upgrade, which when placed on an infinite source produces water, to fill up this glacial precipitator making ice. Because ice is what runs the Frosty Generator, otherwise known as the damn generator making all this snow. The Frosty Generator also runs on things like snow, and also snow, but that snow is a lot harder to make than ice. And ice lasts 2 seconds, so it's good. Arch has graciously explained to me how his Dragon's Breath system works, and that'll be the last thing we do in this episode because this is getting pretty long and the others are even more complicated. Dragon's Breath requires you to use liquid chorus and void vapors in a refinery. To get liquid chorus, you need to melt popped chorus, and to get void vapors, you probably guessed it, but you need to melt void seeds. Here we have two phytogenic insulators, one which turns chorus flower into chorus fruit, and one which turns void seeds into void seeds and void eggplants. It does produce more than enough void eggplants to run the Slimy Generator forever, so we're fine on that front. The void seed insulator takes forever, so we have two mechanical users on it, while the chorus one is pretty fast all on its own. And they're both redstone enabled only when there is less than a certain amount of chorus fruit or less than a certain amount of void seeds in the system, so they don't run constantly. This magma crucible automatically pulls in void seeds from the interface above it, which only works with the redstone signal, i.e. it only works when there are enough void seeds in the system, 64. That's to make sure we don't accidentally run out of void seeds and then deadlock our system forever because there's no void seeds to run the phytogenic insulator. That would be terrible. The magma crucible auto-dumps to the left side, which is one of the fluid inputs to the refinery. The chorus fruit needs to be redstone furnace into popped chorus fruit, and the popped chorus fruit is actually done in a fluid transposer and not a magma crucible. The Dragon's Breath recipe requires 2 buckets of each to make 1 bucket of Dragon's Breath. The refinery automatically dumps its Dragon Breath into this portable tank which holds 20 buckets and has an external storage. And if we want to actually make Dragon's Breath, we have a crafting recipe here on a fluid transposer with a glass bottle and a bucket of Dragon's Breath, which produces the Dragon's Breath. You may be thinking, Jonathan, why didn't you put the fluid transposer as the output of the refinery and just stick glass bottles in it whenever you need Dragon's Breath? Well, the issue is that if you put an item into the fluid transposer before you put the corresponding fluid, the fluid transposer breaks, and even after you put the correct fluid in, it just doesn't work, because God hates us. This happened to us many times, and it happened to us again when we were doing Dragon's Breath. Because we dumped Dragon's Breath into... Oh, Arch is testing the Celestial Manipulator. We dumped Dragon's Breath into the fluid transposer before, but it wasn't very fast. So whenever the system requested Dragon's Breath, it would put a glass bottle on the fluid transposer, but there would be no Dragon's Breath. And once the Dragon's Breath finally entered the fluid transposer would throw up its hands and be like, what do you want me to do? I can't do anything. I have a glass bottle in Dragon's Breath, and that's not okay. That's not a recipe, even though it fucking is. But if you use a Dragon's Breath that puts both the item and the fluid in at the same time, for some reason, that is cool and a-okay. So I guess thanks, Fluid Transposer. Anyway, that's how we make the Dragon's Breath, which is necessary to run the Halitosis Generator and completes the suite of death generators down there. This episode has gotten long TM, and it will only get longer with the Disenchantment Generator, Potion Generator, and Slimy Generator. So we are going to pause this episode here and have another one soon. And by soon, I mean whatever the schedule is that I set for recording. So it could be a week, could be a couple days, could be the next hour. Though I find that rather unlikely. Before we go, though, let me briefly tell you about the Draconic Evolution Celestial Manipulator, which we're just using to make sure it's daytime during our recordings. We're using it. Can you explain to me how this works, Arch? The Celestial Manipulator, according to Arch, has a variety of buttons that you can press to either change the weather or set the time. You can also control these using Redstone Control. You can only do one thing with the Celestial Manipulator, but it'll do that thing when it gets a redstone signal. So here we have a nighttime sensor for Minecraft. That's a daylight sensor, but shift right clicked. It detects when it is nighttime, sends a redstone signal, and the Celestial Manipulator is like, oh my god, it's time to turn on the day! And that way, we don't need to waste our time sleeping. Anyway, that's probably not helpful unless you're a YouTuber, because you can just sleep. And also requires Draconic Evolution, which is basically the end game of the pack. So, but anyway, that's it for today's episode. As always, if you have any comments for viewers on, for example, how to use the Rainbow Generator or how to power any of these generators, please let them know in the comments. I'm sure there's probably better objects we could have used for a variety of these generators, but we did what we did anyway. See you in the next one!